A defeat here would be so hard to bounce back from, wouldn't it? We had no idea what mental state this Leeds team is in.
They haven't looked up for the fight. You've got to ask the question, how badly do these players want it?
But that mentality just isn't quite right. Mentality is key in a playoff game.
Hello and welcome to the Second Tier Preview Show, brought to you by SBK. I'm Ryan Dilks and I'm joined by the Fraser Campbell to my Dean Windass. It's Justin Peach.
Good day to you, Ryan.
Oh, Justin, it's playoff time. It's playoff time, mate. I simply can't believe the most wonderful time of the year is here on our laps, and I can't wait.
Yeah, oh my god, it's just an astounding level of excitement from me. As you say, it's that time of year. It's that time of year. It's not seasonal, you know. We don't talk about summer, winter. It's all about football. It's all about playoffs. It's playoff season. That's what it is. That's the seasonal we have upon us. It's bloody playoff time.
It's the most wonderful time of the year. Don't think I should be singing that in May, but you know, here we are. Honestly, I don't think we maybe get it across enough to our listenership how much we love the playoffs. I mean, we talk about it a fair bunch, but we truly do love this bloody stupid competition of 5 games, don't we? Because it's the single greatest invention ever brought in by the suits, because they don't often get this kind of thing right, but it's honestly the most wonderful time of the year. Your entire season, everything your club has worked towards all season comes down to 3 games.
Yeah.
The stakes don't get much higher than that, do they? And look, imagine how boring it would be if it was just, the top 3 go up. It'd be awful, wouldn't it? Yeah. But it means so many teams still have something to play for in the dying embers of the season. And then when they get there, their hopes and dreams come crashing down around them. It's absolutely top class.
Yeah, it's the only time of year where you will both enjoy tears in both happiness and sorrow. You'll see it on the TV, and it'll be an incredible scenario where you see people crying with joy, you see people crying with sadness, and you just bring it all in, digest it,
Let
love
me
it.
taste your tears.
Come on, bring them on. That's and that's what not a petty kind of way. It just adds to the impact of the football. That's all.
And as a couple of fans who have experienced both the joy of winning in a playoff final and the joy and the dismay of losing, mostly the dismay, it honestly is just all or nothing. And it's the greatest way to get promoted. It's the worst way to end your season, though, at the same time, if you lose at Wembley, isn't it? I'm surprised they don't have more playoff competitions in other leagues, Justin, because surely it's just a no-brainer, isn't it, doing this kind of thing?
Yeah. Like Scotland, for example, it is an incredibly dull affair. They don't have players in Scotland, do they?
I always get a bit confused about the Scottish League works, but they don't have it in the top.
It's a promotion. Yeah, I think in the context.
I think the best way to put it, imagine this, right? They did the playoffs for the final Champions League spot in the Premier League. That would be good, wouldn't it? That would be class.
And completely randomise it as well. Just randomise it.
Maybe.
Yeah, just pull a name out of a hat. Like Luton could play.
No. Right,
yes,
you're getting carried away now. No, I'm talking 4th down to 7th. They get to play it out for a place in the Champions League. I think that would be absolutely class. That would be good. Or a relegation one as well. The loser gets relegated.
It's all about the playoff concept, isn't it? It's all about the playoff concept. I mean, it's a similar thing in Germany with the relegation candidate playing a promotion candidate in the division below. It just adds that level of jeopardy. And as you say, it all comes down to potentially one kick over one game.
Yeah.
Your entire season. You know, if you're finish 30 points ahead of 6th, if third finish 30 points ahead of 6th and just miss out on second place by 1 goal, and then they lose in the playoffs, oh my God.
Yeah.
It just makes you smile. I don't know why.
It'll be traumatising for whichever set of fans misses out. And that's what I'm here for. Welcome to the number 1 Championship podcast, the Second Tier. Thank you for joining us wherever you are. And welcome along to the playoffs. So this is who we've got. Norwich v Leeds, West Brom v Southampton. One of these teams will be promoted to the Premier League. And here's how it's looking with our friends at SBK. If you stuck a £10 bet on those teams to win the playoffs, with Leeds, it would return £26. Southampton would also return £26. Norwich, £62. West Brom, £78. So quite a clear divide between the two teams here, Justin. Do you think that's fair?
Yes and no. I think it's one of those where you got teams out in and out of form, and I think there is an unknown quantity about the playoffs as well, because it's all about mindset, and there are things that are the intangible things you cannot really count upon. Mentally, how have Leeds prepared for this? Mentally, how have Norwich prepared for this? None of them are in sterling form, so I think it adds to the weight of that. So it's certainly an interesting one. I'm not going to comment too much on it.
Yeah, well, if you're looking at it from a table perspective, there's a 12-point gap between Southampton in 4th and West Brom in 5th. But as we have alluded to, the form of these four sides is not anything to be shouting about, is it? So that does make it probably one of the most open playoffs we've had in a while, because I genuinely cannot call who the bloody hell is going up out of these sets of teams. But Justin, let's have a look at it, shall we? We'll start off with the first semi-final, which is the Daniel Farke derby. It's Norwich City v Leeds United, and this is the earlier game on Sunday. It kicks off at midday. Norwich on 9-4 to win the first leg with SBK. Leeds are 6-5. The draw is 12-5. And look, there's only one place to start here, Justin, because it's the big question that's on everyone's lips. Will Leeds continue to fall apart? What do you think, Justin?
At what point have you fallen apart beyond repair? It's like dumping a biscuit in a tea, isn't it? At what point is it falling apart, and at what point is it completely gone, destroyed at the bottom of your mug? Where are Leeds in this? Are they just being dunked, or at the bottom of a mug? Where are they?
Yeah, it's the situation where your biscuit has kind of eroded away. And when you lift your hand back up, you're either going to still have a biscuit attached, or it's at the bottom of your mug now. And that's what we're about to find out with Leeds United on Sunday, I think.
Are Leeds United a soggy biscuit? We won't know until we know.
Why did you have to lower the standards of this conversation?
Someone's got to. But yeah, this is it though. A defeat here would be so hard to bounce back from, wouldn't it? Even if it's over a two-legged tie. Defeat for Leeds would be hard to bounce back from. But then again, they could go full Undertaker and just rise up when the odds are against them, because there's an unpredictability about this Leeds team, despite being so bloody predictable in their form. They've been woefully bad over the last sort of 5 weeks. They were incredible for sort of 12 weeks, and then they were decent for a period of time before that. They've been really consistent. So for them to enter the playoffs becoming an unpredictable side is fairly uncomfortable, but I think that just adds to the notion of, will they continue to fall apart? No idea. We had no idea what mental state this Leeds team is in. We have no idea whether Daniel Farke can pick them back up again. It's an incredible position to be in, because it's one. There's like we were saying, there's always a team in form, and there isn't, and that's what adds to this particular set of playoffs. It is astounding. Yeah,
well, Leeds head into this as the out of form team, don't they? Something which would have been unthinkable a month or two ago, but that's unfortunately the position where Leeds have found themselves in, where they have had a pretty extreme example of them falling apart, the highlight of which was, of course, that now infamous result away at QPR where they got spanked 4-0. However, it's perhaps just as concerning how they pretty much rolled over against Southampton on the final day when they needed to win. I didn't see anywhere near enough fight, as you would expect from a side who needed to win on the final day to maintain any chance of staying up. It's almost like they accepted Huddersfield weren't going to do anything at Ipswich. And let's be honest, they could be playing now, and I'm not sure Huddersfield would have scored. But that's by the by. When you're in Leeds' shoes, you've got to at least live up to your end of the bargain, and Leeds didn't do that. And that's the concerning thing. They haven't looked up for the fight. So you've got to ask the question, how badly do these players want it? Because quite a few of them will be playing top-level football next season. Not sure if it's with Leeds, but a lot of them will be playing top-level football somewhere next season, even if Leeds don't go up. So they need to show in this game that they are a team and that they bloody want this, Justin.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing I didn't really think about, and one that maybe Leeds fans will probably not want to think about, because we can easily sit here from a neutral perspective with no affinity to Leeds and say, well, actually, these players, there's a lot of these players who are likely to be subject to bids like they were in the summer. They're likely to be subject to bids again. Are they aware of the circumstances? Are they aware of the weight of this game for Leeds? Or are they just focused on, well, I'm going to be in the Premier League or I'm going to be in a top flight club next season, regardless of what happens in this game?
Yeah.
So it is such an interesting mindset to be in, and one that does make me think that Norwich are probably in a better position going into this. Because as you pointed out, there's a lot of the reasoning behind their poor form after the international break was players picking up knocks and injuries during the international break, absolutely fine. But for that to carry on over 3-4 weeks and for it to be as bad as it has been, especially that QPR defeat, they imploded. And again, no fight didn't show up against Southampton. There's no fight there. Yeah, that mentality just isn't quite right. It doesn't quite sit right with me. And as I say, mentality is key in a playoff game.
Yeah, well, there's a lot at stake for Leeds, isn't there? And I think that was emphasised in a really interesting piece in The Athletic the other day, Justin, by Phil Hay, who's the Leeds United journalist, really, isn't he? He was talking about whether Leeds need promotion this season. Because, look, we mentioned before with Leicester how they could have been in real shit if they didn't go up. Now, in that piece, it says Leeds won't be in breach of breaking financial rules if they don't go up. But it does hint that a lot of hard decisions are going to have to be made if they don't go up. And following on from what we were just saying, there's some players here who know that they probably won't be at the club next season. So if Leeds don't go up, they will undoubtedly be a lot weaker next season, won't they? So this is a huge chance for them to, not have to worry about that, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. I think the profit and sustainability aspect of it is reassuring, because that'll be the first sort of port of call you go to if a parachute payment club doesn't go back to the Premier League at the first time of asking. You start to think about finances and whether they're going to be breaching that and coming under EFL scrutiny, as many teams have. But the key thing you've got to take away from that is there are going to be players. Wilfred Gnonto's a key example. He's already thrown his toys out the pram at the start of the season. Is he going to do it again this summer if Leeds don't let him go? In that respect, they're probably going to have to let him go if another bid comes in. They've probably said to a lot of these players, look, if you give it your everything this season, come the end of the season, seeing where we're at, if we're not where we need to be, we'll talk about bids. And that's what happens in football. It's what happens at every single football club. So, yeah, whilst they're not under pressure financially to sell, they might be under pressure from the actual individuals to sell. And that will ultimately lead them down a weaker path next season if they were to stay in the Championship.
I think they'll be under pressure to sell to an extent, but it's not like Leicester, for example, where Leicester look like they could be in a real bad position if they didn't. How
many unhappy players do you want at your club is the sort of thing that you want.
Other thing is, Leicester don't have many sellable assets, do they? We were talking about this not too long ago. Kiernan Dewsbury Hall is the main one, and after that, you're scraping the barrel a bit. Whereas Leeds have the likes of Archie Gray, Crescencio Somerville, Willie Gnonto. There's probably a few others there who I haven't mentioned, who they could quite easily sell, and they'll be absolutely fine next season. But they're obviously going to be weaker, and that's the issue that they've got here, is that if they don't go up, then it's going to be even more difficult, much more difficult next season to try and replicate the season that they've had. Well, if Leeds are going to go up, Justin, the big thing is with them, they need to defy their playoff record, don't they? Because Leeds have had 5 attempts in the playoffs, never been promoted. Well, from a mindset perspective, do you think that has some sort of an effect on these Leeds players?
I think Leeds players will say it doesn't. I'd be inclined to agree with them. Obviously the likes of Patrick Bamford, Liam Cooper, probably one or two others currently at the squad, they're going to be there from their last playoff defeat against Derby. But does Ethan Ampadu give a shit? Does Georgina Ruta care about their previous playoff record? Probably not.
What about the tag of falling apart, Justin? Do you think that's something that might play on their minds?
Do you know what? A bit of psychology here. I'm not professing to be a psychology expert, but I remember back when Frank Lampard was in charge of Derby usually fall off in around February. It's been a big thing. It was a huge thing for supporters, and they just know that fall off and drop off is coming. It's cost them places in the automatics before in previous years. Frank Lampard addressed it and said it doesn't exist. It did exist because Derby then dropped off.
Yeah.
So all that talk from supporters on social media, players will see it, and therefore there maybe that might get into there. So that Leeds falling apart tag, and all the supporters around the country reminding them that they have fallen apart, that might get into their heads. But at the same time, I think there are a lot of sturdy professionals there with a hell of a lot of experience, top flight experience as well. I don't think it will impact them too much, but if one goal goes in and Norwich fans start seeing and Leeds are falling apart again, Leeds may well fall apart again.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I was going to say. All it takes is one goal and suddenly the falling apart tag really starts to living up to its mantle, doesn't it? Well, looking ahead to Sunday, Daniel Farkas says there won't be any emotion from him going back to his old stomping ground. Of course, spent 4 years at Carrow Road, very fondly thought of there after getting 2 promotions. But look, Norwich won't want to do him any favours at all because they've had a remarkable second half of the season. Only Leeds and Ipswich have won more points than Norwich City in 2024. However, they've had their own mini slump at the end of the season, haven't they? Just 1 win in 4. Here's a question for you, Justin. Is this a bit of a free hit for Norwich and David Wagner? I will also add in that, I believe since 2007, only one team has finished 6th and ended up winning the playoffs. So that's one thing to keep in mind here. But the reason I asked the original question is because I think it's fair to say not many people fancy them to get a playoff place in the first place at the very start of the season, particularly around autumn time when it was really going to shit. But if they don't get promoted, it's not a failure by any means, is it? Not compared to Leeds, for example. Not saying if Leeds don't go up, it's not a failure, but their expectations were a lot higher than Norwich's, weren't they?
Yeah, it was. I think I wouldn't say it's a free hit because if you look at it pragmatically, Norwich have a chance of promotion here, a real chance of promotion. They're also a second-year parachute payment team. So next season, their revenue is going to drop because they're going to get less money from the Premier League if they stay in the Championship, and therefore players might well need to be sold. They're also in a similar scenario to the one that we were discussing with Leeds, is that players are going to be subject to bids like Gabriel Sara. Oh my God, Gabriel Sara is going to 25 million pounds. There's going to be bids coming in for the players like that because of the season that they had.
Josh Sargent with a move away.
Yeah, exactly. They had to sell Andrew Abomadeli last summer. Adam Ida's gone to Celtic on loan and is likely to leave. So they have had to sell assets, and they will probably have to do that again if they don't go up. There is a pressure on this game, so I don't think it's a free hit. At the same time, it's a surprise. I guess it's a surprise considering where they were in the autumn, because fans wanted David Wagner out. They almost wanted the board out. They were very anti-Stuart Webber. Ben Napper was coming into an absolute nightmare. But David Wagner's turned it around and made it actually a nice working environment for everybody, because it was volatile, it was angry. Norwich fans were not happy. And now they are. But I don't think it's a free hit because, as I say, Norwich financially, they'll feel the pressure as well.
Yeah, I think that's fair, Justin. I think that's a very fair point. Johnny Rose, another one who has been subject to quite a bit of interest from other clubs as well, isn't he? So, yeah, I think you've made a very valid point there. And I look at other teams, mainly West Brom in this case. I think West Brom could use this season as a platform. I'm not as confident Norwich will be able to use it as a platform. So I think they may have to make the most of it, for the lack of a better term of explaining that. But look, I've got to say this, Justin. I really fancy Norwich to win this first leg. And I'm not sure about winning the tie overall, but I think a lot is going in their favour in this first leg, and I'll explain why. Of course, there is the most important thing here, and that's Leeds' horrendous foot. The pressure seems to have really got to them recently. And if Norwich manage to score first here, then, as we were alluding to earlier, the Leeds are falling apart chants will be going around the stadium. They'll be ringing around Carrow Road, and that will not help things from a Leeds perspective. But then you've also got Norwich's home form. Only the top 3 this season have won more points at home than Norwich have at Carrow Road. Plus, Leeds' away form hasn't been impressive recently either. Even before this big slump, they've only won twice on the road since mid-February. So, in this first leg, not the tie overall, but in this first leg, I can see Norwich doing a job on Leeds. What do you think?
I wouldn't be surprised. I would back Norwich to get something here against Leeds because of the factors that you said. And as well as that, if it's going to be a tight game, which I expect it to be, they've got someone like Gabriel Sara who's well equipped to score a goal from 30 yards out, or he's well equipped to deliver that killer set piece. Or that key pass into Josh Sargent's feet. They are capable of withstanding pressure and seizing their moment. They did it against Ipswich, for example. They dominated the ball. There wasn't too many chances created in their game, but they relied on one moment of I would say a little bit of quality, and also a goalkeeping error from Vakav Hladky. That was a big game, a tight game, a derby game, which is similar. It was going to be similar to a playoff game, as well as they've got David Wagner as well, who, he's not a managerial genius, but he got Huddersfield promoted via the playoffs, against some well-financed teams, and I've said it before in previous shows. He 0-0'd his way all the way to the Premier League. That's an incredible. Yeah, that's an incredible way of doing it. Boring way to do it, and hopefully he doesn't do that like that. But he's a tactician. He's a tactician. He knows how to set up his teams not to lose, and I think that'll make it harder for Leeds. And I say Norwich have got those players who have got are capable of winning games, and therefore I agree with you.
Yeah, good to hear. Well, Justin, that's good news, because it's now time for our second tier bet builder with SBK. And with SBK, you can curate your own bet builder from a range of markets for any championship game. It's easy, fast and secure on the SBK mobile app, and you'll find substantially better odds there than at any other bookmaker. So Justin is going to make 2 selections, and I'm going to make 2 selections. So kick us off, Justin. What is your first selection on Norwich v Leeds?
Much of what I just said, really. Norwich or a draw in this game, a double chance, if you will. Norwich with the home advantage in the first leg, facing a Leeds side who, as described already, falling apart. They're at the bottom of that team, aren't they? That mug of tea, sorry. And as well, Norwich at Carrow Road are formidable. Lost just 4 all season. You've already mentioned all the stats. I don't need to go back over it. I expect Leeds to approach this with caution. I expect them to be harder to break down, but I expect Norwich to be harder to break down as well. Couple that with Wagner probably not showing all of his cards for Norwich in this game either. I think it's going to be a good balance. So for me, it's going to be a Norwich win or a draw.
Yeah, I agree with that. As we were just alluding to, Norwich, there's a lot going in their favour heading into this one. So I think that is a good pick. My first selection for our bet builder is over 3.5 cards. The reason I've gone with this is because the referee here is Josh Smith. And since Boxing Day, he's overseen 13 games in the Championship, Premier League and League One. And he's given out 4 cards or more in every single one of those games. So with that being said, it looks like a pretty safe bet here, Justin. Are you all right with that?
Yeah, you've got Norwich having to deal with some silky players as well. Potential for some cynical gamemanship to creep in. So, yeah, why not? Some dark arts at play, some kicks, some side kicks here and there, some yellow cards being dished out. I don't know. I agree with it.
Yeah, as far as bet builders go, I don't think you can have a bet on Kenny McLean slicing down Jorginho Ruta after 10 minutes, but I think that would be a fair one if it was there to be bet on.
There's no odds on letting them know they're there. Let them know you're there.
It's a very good point. I wish we could bet on that. Justin, what's your next selection?
Yeah, the next selection for me is both teams to score. I do expect it to be a tight game, but both sides, both really talented attacks. They really do, and clinical players as well. Somerville has the ability to ghost inside and just nonchalantly just clip it into a corner. And Gabriel Sara, who can just hit a thunder bastard from absolutely anywhere. He's got no respect for a football, and I love that. Couple that with Josh Sargent, Boyer Signs on one side, as I mentioned, Somerville, Rutter, Nonto for Leeds on the other, plus more for Leeds actually. I expect it to be a tight affair, but there's some quality players here for it to be 0-0. I find it hard to believe that. If it's going to be 0-0, it's defied belief. But with all of those variables, all of those talented players in attack, both teams turned up on the score sheet. Yeah, I like that.
And my final selection kind of ties into that, Justin. I've gone with Crescencio Somerville to score any time. Old Crescencio has scored nearly a quarter of Leeds' goals this season. They are quite reliant on him at times. Very often we've seen Leeds really struggle to produce anything in the final third, but then they give the ball to old Crescencio, he cuts in, whips it into the top bin. And I think if Leeds are going to cause Norwich any problems here, it's going to come from the feet of Mr. Somerville. Justin, what do you think?
Yeah, like you said, I think he's got the ability to turn games on its head. All you've got to do is feed him the ball and he'll do something with it. So for him to score, it's a pretty good bet, I believe.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, a £10 stake on that bet builder with SBK returns £78. But look, because SBK are feeling extra fruity ahead of the playoffs, you can get a free £2 bet builder for Norwich versus Leeds with SBK. And if you manage to, if you wanted to put that £2 bet builder on our bet builder, that would pay £15.60. Not bad from £2, is it? Over 18s only, and T's and C's apply. Please gamble responsibly. That again, bet Bet Builder is Norwich or draw in a double chance selection. Over 3.5 cards, both teams score, and Crescencio Somerville to score any time. Justin, let's take a quick break. After that, we'll talk about the other playoff semi-final, which is West Brom v Southampton. Welcome back to the Second Tier podcast, and it's now time for us to discuss the other playoff semi-final. It's the Shane Long derby between West Brom and Southampton. West Brom a 9-5 to win the first leg with SBK. Southampton 8-5. The draw is 11-5. So they think it's a really tough one to call, and I do too, Justin, particularly because both these sides have been so out of form.
Yeah, it's such an interesting one. It just, my mind just sort of went to how 2007 does this game feel, by the way? How Coca-Cola does this game feel?
Yeah.
West Brom, Southampton.
It does, you're right. Yeah, Diamanti Camera competing against, I don't know.
Marek Saganowski.
Yes.
It's just so 2007. But, I mean, I completely forgot what your original question was. What did you ask me?
Both these teams have been very out of form recently, haven't
they? Yes, they have. They absolutely have. They have. And I think that's what, again, what we were alluding to with the drama of this set of playoffs is that no team is in form. Therefore, it's become a little bit harder to predict. I think everyone likes to, I say everyone, all of your pundits and content creators out on the World Wide Web, they like to diminish the cliche that the playoffs are a lottery. But I think there's nothing that's defining this set of players more than it being a lottery, because every team being out of form, you're relying on player quality here, but even so, I don't think player quality is going to get either team over the line in this one, because Southampton boast one of the most talented squads I've seen at Championship level, yet they're not really showing it. And then West Brom, on paper, probably have one of the least talented squads in the playoffs right now, or probably the least talented set of players in the squad playoffs right now. But here they are, with me sort of going, actually, I quite fancy them, mainly because they're so good defensively. So, yeah, both teams out of form makes it hard to predict. So hard to predict.
Yeah, well, similarly to what we were just saying with Leeds, I feel the pressure's a lot more on Southampton here than it is West Brom. And you were just alluding to it then, Justin. Southampton got a very talented squad. If they don't go up, they may have to have a fire sale of their own, might they?
Yeah, we're on a fire sale hype today, but that's just where we're at with Leeds and Southampton, because
that's what's at stake here, isn't it, Justin?
Yeah, well, this is what's at stake for any team coming down on parachute payments. I mean, West Brom, on the other hand, don't have a lot of sellable assets. They're in a reset phase, if you like, because they've got new ownership now, and the pressure's off them to go up because that financial pressure's gone. But with Southampton, like you said, there's a lot of players. Kyle Walker-Peters, is he going to want another a season at Championship level? Adam Armstrong's had an incredible season. Is he going to face interest from Premier League clubs? There are a lot of things here for Southampton to contend with, and as well as that, is Russell Martin up for the job? Is Russell Martin up for guiding Southampton, solidifying them and making them a bona fide promotion contender? That's the only thing that makes me uncertain about this Saints side. Is not the players really. It's more so Russell Martin. It doesn't quite convince me, whereas Carlos Corberán does.
Yeah, well, you talk about some of the players who could potentially be heading out the door. Kyle Walker-Peters is one. Adam Armstrong is another one who may be the subject of interest. Shea Adams almost certainly looks like he's going. Stuart Armstrong does too. And then some of the loan players they've got in as well, like Taylor Harwood-Bellis. I think there's a clause which makes his loan permanent if they go up, but if they don't, then they'll probably be waving goodbye to him. Flynn Downs is he going to be playing in the Championship next season? Probably not. So, yeah, it's Southampton's team could be looking very different next season, could be looking a lot weaker. And they've also spent a fair bit of money this season, not seeing great returns from that money either. So, yeah, they need to head into this game and make their quality count, don't they? Because I absolutely agree with you, Justin. Southampton have by far a much more talented squad than West Brom, but making that count is going to be the really difficult thing here. And if they don't, then Southampton, there's a lot at stake for them. You could make a fair argument that there's more at stake for them than there is Leeds in this one. Both those sides spent a fair bit of money, and both could be seeing some of their star players heading out the door if they don't win the playoffs ultimately. But here's an interesting stat for you, Justin. Southampton have won 14 points from an available 18 in both games against Leeds, Norwich and West Brom this season. They haven't lost any of the games against their fellow playoff contenders. that feels like a significant thing, no?
Well, yeah, they weirdly their mindset is more set up for these big games than perhaps the other games are against the lesser sides. But at the same time, you know, they're approaching this one with a lot of pressure, which may impact them. It may impact them, but you never know. But I think with that, you know, playoffs completely changes your mindset. I imagine as a player, especially it does as a supporter, because Leeds are a good example. They beat Derby in all of their ties back when Derby beat them in the playoffs in the 18-19 season, and then Derby go and pull a rabbit out of the hat in the final game. So I don't think league form against these sides actually really matters too much. Mentally, it might add an edge, but playoffs becomes a different beast once you're in them. Completely different beast. It's a completely different battle to what it is in the league, and I don't think it's going to give Southampton a too big of advantage, to be honest with you.
Well, do you think one advantage could be in the hands of West Brom, Justin, and the amount of experience they've got? Because out of the teams in the playoffs, West Brom's players have made nearly twice the number of appearances in a playoff campaign as any of the other sides. West Brom's players have made a total of 42 appearances in their careers in the playoffs, while the next best is Norwich with 22. Mm-hmm. That's quite the drop-off, isn't it? So one would think that's a big advantage for West Brom, isn't it?
Without a shadow of doubt. That ability to know what playoffs brings, the atmospheres, the pressures, the refereeing decisions, it being on TV. There's a lot of pressures that clubs don't necessarily consider, or players wouldn't necessarily consider, compared to a normal Saturday afternoon at 3:00 or 7:45 on a Tuesday. Completely different kettle of fish with the playoffs. As I say, I think having that experience, especially with West Brom, who also have Carlos Corberán, who guided Huddersfield to a playoff final, whereas Russell Martin doesn't have that experience. Both David Wagner and Carlos Corberán have got those edges on their opposing managers going into these sets of playoffs, and I think Carlos Corberán having that is probably a bigger one than maybe the players. Having that playoff experience is probably a bigger one than maybe the players. I think as well as that, the way West Brom set their side up, being hard to beat, difficult to break down, suits playoffs games. It suits playoff games. I always favour the defensive sided teams going into the playoffs, because it becomes a mini World Cup. It becomes a mini tournament. I've said it in previous years, and that's really going to suit the team that has a tactician rather than the style of play manager.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned there, Justin, about the defensive side of the game, because that's something that I always think with playoff teams, mm-hmm. and who's contending in it. If you're well organised at the back, you tend to do better in the playoffs. And I've got the examples of that right here. You look at last season's final. It was Luton and Coventry. Those two had the best defensive records in the league outside of the two teams who got automatically promoted. The season before, Forest went up and they had the second best defensive record in the league. The season before, it was Brentford v Swansea in the final, and those two also had the best defensive records in the league outside of the top two. Same again with Brentford and Fulham the year before. This season, only Leeds and Leicester have conceded fewer goals than West Brom. So that's promising, isn't it? So with that being said, and this is a big call, Justin, I think West Brom are a bit of a dark horse in these playoffs. What do you think?
Yeah, it's strange, isn't it, considering West Brom are a dark horse in the playoffs, despite spending 2/3 of the season in the top six.
Yeah, I can see what you mean.
It's a strange psychology to have in your head, but I'd be inclined to agree with you. I think the only thing that's going to hold them back is quality in front of goal, and how much of that quality is going to prove a difference for Southampton, because they've got Adam Armstrong, who's been incredible this season. They've got Shay Adams, who has become such a great poacher in the final third, especially over the last sort of 6-7 weeks. They've got a lot of quality with Southampton. That could be the difference. But West Brom being well drilled defensively, albeit not particularly fantastic going into the season up until that Preston game on the final day of the last campaign. I would be inclined to agree with you. The amount of clean sheets West Brom keep is going to suit them better than the amount of goals Southampton tend to score with. So that control in games, I think, sits with West Brom more so than it does Southampton.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think in an environment like this, where everything just comes down to grinding out a result, I think Carlos Corberán is the best of these four managers at doing that. I would say, as we were alluding to earlier, they've got the weakest squad in terms of talent out of these four sides, and that will probably lead to more of an emphasis on keeping it tight and trying to frustrate the opposition. And I think West Brom will be happy with doing that while letting Southampton have 90% possession in the game. And then, anything can happen as long as they do keep it tight at the back. We've got to remember as well, because they've been very good and very consistent for 90% of the season. It's only the final few games where they've had a bit of a stumble into it. The other three sides have had pretty dramatic ups and downs with their form, where West Brom's form has been, by and large, very steady. So don't underestimate West Brom here. They might be the outsiders with our friends at SBK, but I could easily see them doing a job on Southampton. And the other thing is, even if they don't get the win at the Hawthorns, I wouldn't say, that's done and dusted. Southampton will probably win at St Mary's. Because you think back to last season, Justin, Coventry v Middlesbrough, I think I'm right in saying the first leg ended in a draw, didn't it? And then at the other side, Coventry just did a job on Middlesbrough. I could see a similar kind of thing happen this year.
Yeah, it was a proper job. And again, that Middlesbrough team does strike me a little bit, similarities to the current Southampton team, where they struggled to control games. They created an abundance of chances, weren't overly clinical when they needed to be, and ultimately they were done by a tactician in Mark Robbins and a defensively organised team. Like Coventry really did a number on West Brom. Middlesbrough last season. I expect Carlos Corberan to do exactly the same thing here. Cut those avenues, cut those passing lanes into the dangerous players, and essentially just allow Southampton to play in front of him. West Brom are comfortable doing that. They've been doing it under Carlos Corberan since he took charge. Not going to change now.
Yeah. Well, if Southampton don't make the most of all the possession that they're inevitably going to have, and the chances that are presented to them, then they will regret it. I can almost say that for sure. Justin, it's time for us to do our bet builder with SBK on this game. And just a reminder that with SBK, you can curate your own bet builder from a range of markets for any championship game. It's easy, fast and secure on the SBK mobile app, and you'll find substantially better odds there than at any other bookmaker. So same again, Justin is going to make two selections for this game. I'm going to make two selections. Justin, can you throw your first selection at me, please?
Gone for a bit of an easy one. I've gone for the half-time result to be a draw. I think this is going to be attack v defence at times, but one where West Brom do hold firm. Mix that with Southampton's record of, notwithstanding the Leeds win, I would expect them not to be too open to the threat of a counter, especially in the first leg of a playoff tie. Playoff ties are always tight, they're always cagey, they're hyped up, but can be dull affairs, especially in the first 45 minutes. And I think West Brom, being a team that are typically hard to break down, I know they dropped out of form coming into the set of playoffs, but that win against Preston would be confidence boosting. But it's hard to envisage Corberan not allowing Southampton to, be a free flowing attack inside. So for me, going to be a tight first half time result to be a draw.
Yeah, out of these two semi-finals, this one looks much more likely to be the tight one, doesn't it? Where, one of the teams is just trying to keep it tight and not make any clumsy mistakes. And I can definitely see that being the case here. So a half-time result to be a draw seems like a safe one. And my first selection on the bet builder is Southampton to have the most corners. Now, going off what we've been saying here, we're kind of expecting West Brom to, keep it tight at the back, not let Southampton get any spaces down the middle. So that should lead to quite a few Southampton corners if they continue to, crank the pressure up on at West Brom. But it's interesting because the Leeds game on the final day was only the second game in Southampton's last 15 where they didn't have more corners than their opponents. So 2 games out of 15 where Southampton didn't have more corners than their opponents. That's a bloody good record in terms of this selection. So it goes to show they bloody love a corner. And when these two met in the league at the Hawthorns back in February, Southampton had more corners than West Brom. So I've gone with this selection, Justin. Are you happy with that?
Yeah, it's a good one. Southampton do generate a lot of passing combinations down the flanks, I think would be the best way to describe it, and therefore they're going to get a lot of deflections, a lot of chances to swing crosses in and get deflected out. So for me, I think most corners is a good shout.
What's your next selection, Justin?
I've gone with Southampton to score over 0.5 second half goals. I expect the first half, as I said, to be tight and a dull affair. Going to see Russell Martin sulking on the sideline. He's going to look like he's disgruntled, like he's just been served his burger without cheese, despite asking for it specifically. He then gets the players in at half time and gives them a rocket up their arses. This is what Russell Martin does. And I do think Southampton to some extent will switch it on. It has happened on many occasions this season. I just think sometimes Russell Martin needs the interval to drill into his players to stop being so wasteful and passive. So therefore, I think Southampton to score, especially with the talented attack that they've got, I do think is a good shout.
Yeah, I'm all right with that, Justin. And my final selection is under 4.5 cards. Now, my thinking here is the referee is Sam Barrett. And out of all the referees who have officiated more than 20 championship games this season, he's given out the fewest yellow cards. In fact, this calendar year, he's officiated 18 games in all competitions and only given out 5 cards or more in one of them. So for him to give out under 4.5 cards, this seems a safe bet. Justin, give me a yes or a no, please.
I'll say yes. You're on Ref Watch today, and I like it.
Yeah, well, I think it's a very good way of trying to get as much value out of your bet builder as possible. And we'll just quickly go through that bet builder again, Justin. It's half-time results to be a draw, which we've gone with. Southampton to have the most corners. Southampton over 0.5 second-half goals and under 4.5 cards in this first leg between West Brom and Southampton. And a £10 stake on that with SBK returns £90. Max stake of £10 over 18s only, and T's and C's apply. Please do gamble responsibly. Guess what? It's now time for this.
Scott High or Ryan Lowe?
Neil Best is fucking shit, mate.
Oh dear lordy, it's time for Scott High or Ryan Lowe. This is the game where we have to rank 4 things from highest to lowest. It's as simple as that, and there's 3 questions. This week, I'm providing the questions for Justin. Are you ready, Peachy?
Ooh, yeah, I am. Go on.
That's good to hear. Well, of course, we're celebrating the wonder of the playoffs here today. So here's a playoff-themed question. Here's 4 teams. I want you to rank them on who's competed in the playoffs the most times since the championship was rebranded in 2004. Not looking for playoff finals, just the playoffs in its entirety. Those clubs involved in this are Cardiff City, Crystal Palace, Ipswich Town, Wolverhampton Wanderers.
So, just to reiterate, from Championship when it was rebranded in 2004.
Correct.
Ooh. I can't remember Wolves being involved in too many playoff campaigns, so I'm going to go with them bottom. Ipswich were 04-05. They've done it under Mick McCarthy as well, so I think it's going to be tight, so I'll go with them. I'll go with them to be second. Who was the first team again you mentioned? I know Cardiff was 1.
And Crystal Palace.
I'm going to go Ipswich. Oh shit! I don't know. I'm going to go. Yeah, it is. I'm going to go Cardiff, Ipswich, Palace, Wolves.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I am.
Oh, you're so close, Justin. You're so bloody close. Cardiff were top. They have had 4 playoff campaigns. Only ever got to 1 final when they lost to Blackpool. Poor Cardiff. Crystal Palace were next. They've had 3. Ipswich were below them with 2. And you were right with Wolves. They've only had 1 playoff campaign since the league was rebranded in 2004. So you were bloody close, Justin. You just got Palace and Ipswich the wrong way round.
Yeah, I can't. I can think of 2 playoff campaigns off the top of my head with Palace, but I can't think of that third.
You're going right to the very start of the championship.
Yeah. 04-05 and then 05-0. No,
asking a man who hasn't got this written down in front of him.
Fantastic.
But
Thank
it's
you
around
so
the head,
bloody
yes.
much.
They, of course, won it, didn't they? Because that was how they got promoted
Yeah.
in their current stint in the Premier League. And then they got to 2 semi-finals, I think, right at the very start of the championship era. So your thinking was right. You just didn't implement it well enough. Yeah, exactly. Next up, Justin, looking ahead to the final itself, I want you to rank the score lines on which is the most common in the playoff final. They are 0-0, 1-0, 1-1, and 2-1. Which of those is the most common in the playoff final?
I can't remember anything that you said.
I will just reiterate it since the championship was rebranded in 2004. So
That's
0-0, 1-0, 1-1, 2-1.
I'm going to go 2-1 top.
Okay.
Then 1-0.
Mm-hmm.
Then 1-1. Then 0-0.
I feel like you went in there way too quickly because you've got that so wrong. Obviously, 1-0 was top. There have been 8 occasions where
obviously
8 occasions where the playoff final finished 1-0. 2-1 had 3 occasions. That was next. 0-0 twice, and then 1-1 once last year. That was the first ever 1-1 in a playoff final.
That's an incredible stat. But again, what do you mean? Obviously, 1-0's the top scoreline.
Have a think about it.
No, I don't want to.
If you actually thought about it, you think, okay, there's been quite a lot of 1-0s, and when there's been 8 1-0s and only 3 2-1s, which is the next highest, just maybe take your time, Justin. All right.
Next time I will. Thank you. Next
okay,
question.
Good. Take your time in 10 seconds. Here's 4 famous people. Completely random famous people. I just want you to rank them from oldest to youngest, please. Those famous people are Simon Cowell, Richard Keys, Piers Morgan, and Louis Walsh.
Richard Keys. Simon Cowell is old, but the man's face is new. I'm going to go
astute observation.
Yeah. I'm going to go Louis Walsh top. He's the oldest. Jedward don't like him, by the way. I've seen clips. Not a fan of him.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
Have a look, guys. I can't be asked to go back over it.
Yeah. I prefer if you didn't say it on the podcast either, because sticky ground, I think.
Maybe it is. Louis Walsh top is the oldest. Then Simon Cowell. Then I will go Richard Keys and Piers Morgan.
Oh, you're so close again, Justin. You were right. Louis Walsh is top. He's 71. I tell you what, 71. Fair play to the guy. Richard Keys was next. 67 he is. 67. Simon Cowell is 64, which I thought he was older, personally. And then Piers Morgan's 59.
I don't know whether he looks younger or older.
I think he looks much older.
Yeah. That's what that's what being bitter and angry does to you, doesn't it?
Well, it's your words, not mine, but I'm not going to disagree with you either. Justin, you've fallen foul to Scott High or Ryan Lowe, and this has been the second tier preview show brought to you by SBK. And ladies and gentlemen, it's the most wonderful time of the year because it's the playoffs. So we'll be back again on a Sunday to give our reaction to the first legs of the playoff semi-finals. So we bloody look forward to seeing you then. But this has been the second tier podcast. I've been Ryan Dilks.
I've been Justin Peach.
And a big thank you for listening.